What's going on? No, seriously, what is going on? If you open the news, you see the economy, it's fantastic. It's never been better. How is that possible? Well, in today's video, I'm going to explain what's actually happening. And then for those who wait until the end, we're going to see where it's going. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. In today's video, we're going to look at several pieces of information, tie that all together into what's coming. It's already in development right now, and what they're going to feed you, literally. Well, it'll be crunchy at least. You heard me. US GDP grew at 4.9% annual pace in the third quarter. That was better than expected. Wow, the economy is so strong. 5% growth? What are we talking? Is this a developing nation? It can't be the US. Well, what was it? Well, when you break that down, what they basically said was the Taylor Swift concerts and her movie and all the other Barbie movies and Oppenheimer. Many people were spending money on those things, and that was central to the growth. I would like to note the fact that when people have to spend more on every single thing that they do, yes, it could support the economy, but not in a good way. It's not as if people have extra cash that they're throwing out there. This is being spent on the things that they need. Okay, I have talked about the anecdotal evidence before, looking at restaurants and things that just do not have the ability to really keep all their staff. They don't have as many people coming in through the door. I have heard from you, and that goes for different cities around the United States, places in Canada, in other areas around the world, dealing with basically the same issue. It affects seemingly most industries and different parts, so we know that this is a widespread problem. What's going on? Let's continue. Okay, we're going to look at this analysis. Each thing that I do here is top down as we break through this one step at a time. The economy was supposed to be slow by now, but instead it's revving up. Analysts are raising their year-end forecast as the Fed ponders whether to increase interest rates again. I have noted, just watched it again, where Jerome Powell said specifically that we do not have a restrictive policy at this time. And what does he mean by that? I know for some people they say, like, what does that mean? All he's saying is that where interest rates are, it is simply not too much. And so that tells us that they could be going in the higher for longer, basically this higher for longer mantra. They could be continuing that. Keeping interest rates where they are would mean that borrowing costs, whether that's credit cards, whether that is mortgages, whether that's personal loans, everything, that means they are going to stay expensive for a while. So the slowdown could persist. That's all. If it continues, we'll see. All right. We have this. Speaking of credit cards and debt, you're looking at the credit card debt, which is red. And it shows us that we are at a record high, as you might imagine. At the same time, the personal savings rate continues to be towards the lowest it's been. This chart goes back for over a decade. And of course, the amount of money that's being left over, that's what personal savings rate refers to. It's not like how many, the deposits in the bank or whatever. This is suggesting to us that people do not have any cash left over. And of course, when things are so expensive and basic essentials cost much more than they did a few years ago, certainly people are burdened by it. You have retail credit card rates hitting a record high, looking at 28.93%. My goodness. And many actually go over that. Now, this is like for the different store cards that you would have. And believe me, I remember when I was very young working in retail, and I would see the people coming in. They would get those cards. Okay, I wouldn't advise it to them, but people would do that. And, you had these very, the salesmen that worked there, let's just say, that they would be pushing this on people. Why? Because every sign up they got some incentive to do that. The problem here is not that there is a card, it's that oftentimes people who get these cards are those that have a balance, and that's at 30%. You are going to be crushed. And guess what? A lot of people are in this circumstance. They have found themselves in the debt spiral and will not make it out. And so they'll have to go through bankruptcy, and so their credit will be ruined for a period of time. This is not beneficial when we have delinquencies. Car delinquencies right now are the highest they have ever been. If you heard me correctly, listen up closely, please. Car delinquencies have never been like this before. And the data goes back to 1994. That's as far back as the data goes. And all throughout, we have never seen it this high. That's including the financial crisis. So that just tells us, that's just a little bit of a warning sign of what's to come. But I have more for you. Wait, there's more. All right. Look at this. Topgolf Baltimore is listed for sale about a year after opening. Topgolf property in Northeast Philadelphia is up for sale. Now, you could point to the particular cities and say, look, this is just one area, so it's not going to, affect everywhere. What does it tell us, though? It tells us that people likely do not have the disposable income that they did previously. This is referring to what happened with milk. And this whole article is all about the dairy and specifically in New Zealand. And so what's happening here, New Zealand being, a big exporter producer of milk, of dairy, and essentially in the case of exports to China, they fell 40% compared with the same quarter last year. All right. And last year, by the way, not a very, particularly productive year in China. And so you could see this one thing after another. What they said was they took the dairy and then created milk powder so that it could be used in other things, but that preserves the shelf life so they can use it now, preserve it, and then be able to utilize that over a period of time. Interesting. Okay. So I just wanted to make note of this. Like it's all over the place. And you could point to one stat or another, and it just seems like this bunch of disconnected things. But do you see how we're connecting the dots? The consumer is not strong. They might be spending, but they're spending on the credit cards. They are spending maybe just like what China's doing. Let's spend a bunch of money. Let's do preserves. Let's spend it on our garden. Let's spend it on our home because we want to be able to weather this storm. I know a lot of people that are in a circumstance right now that they likely can't get out of. They might have to sell their home. They might have to sell some of their assets. They might be in a position where they absolutely were 180-degree difference just a few years ago. And that is not a good sign for the economy as a whole. All right. This is basically just talking about crime and just saying that retail theft is worst in these 10 cities. And I'd like you to take a guess where those cities are. I'm sure you can guess a few of them at least. LA, Oakland, San Francisco, Houston, New York, Seattle, Atlanta, Georgia, Sacramento, California, Chicago, all the way down. Okay. So you see that we have crime. It's going on everywhere. There has been a surge in all types of crime, whether it is car theft. I've seen carjackings in the middle of the highway in LA. I have seen, the wildest things are going on right now. So we have this. Why? Because prosperity is down. We have other issues too. There's some politics involved. But the point is, this is going on all at the same time. Remote employees don't work as hard, says the head of the world's biggest commercial landlord. This is for Blackstone, okay? And I think a lot of people, by the way, get BlackRock and Blackstone confused. But anyway, this is important because now what's happening is a lot of the businesses, especially like the banks inside of Canada, for instance, every single one is laying people off. No, they're not doing mass layoffs of half the staff and all these things, but all of them are doing it. And we're talking about thousands here, thousands there. It is pretty significant. And so that's happening. But they're basically, what I'm hearing internally from many different companies is that all of them are saying you got to start coming back to work more often. And the employees want to go back to work more often. Not that they want to, but in a sense, they need to be there because they need their boss to see them. They need to make sure that they are apparently, working in things, even if they might be doing the same or less work, doesn't matter. Being there, then suddenly the boss recognizes you. That's happening at all the big banks, the financial establishments right now. So that's important for commercial real estate, but also just shows us a big change. And we could start to see this becoming a trend in the next little while. Where does that lead us? Well, you made it to this part of the video, and I want to thank you for that. If you found it informative so far, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you're supporting me. Also, at the same time, by clicking that one button right down below, you're basically telling the algorithm, they're like, hey, this is a good thing. So it's like sharing with your friends and family. But if you can't do that, literally clicking that is like kind of like sharing it with the YouTube world. So I appreciate that. Now you can ask yourself, where does this lead? Well, I'll tell you. Back several years ago, the World Economic Forum had this 8 predictions for the world in 2030. And on the right side, you might be able to see that. It just basically says, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. This is it. This is what they're setting up. Now you can, of course, argue that's just one group of people and so on and so forth. Yeah, I get that. But it's coming. And it's real crunchy. What am I talking about? We'll mention that in a second here. Passing out tents is Adam's possible next step in the New York migrant crisis. Understand what's going on overall, though, with people living on the streets. That's the only reason I mentioned this. We have so many people, every city, it seems, every big city, where there are streets, they're just lined up with tents, they're lined up with RVs or people living in their vehicles. There are parking lots that have now been designated. They've been designated to be areas in which people can just live there. We don't have enough shelter. Okay, you can just live in this parking lot from now. And it is wild because this didn't exist just a little while ago. So we can see the general trend, and that's going to be the new thing. You'll own nothing except maybe a tent, or it will be provided to you by the government. That's the direction we're heading. But wait, there's more. We have this. Tyson Foods invests in eating bugs and insect protein. Now, you might say to yourself, well, this is not necessarily for human consumption yet. It's essentially going to be for, feed it to the animals, then we eat the animals. That's what they're trying to say. It doesn't matter because they're not the only one to say that. Of course, the World Economic Forum had said that. You also see this. You may see lab-grown meat and insects on the menu in future decades as the world grapples with the challenges of food security posed by climate change and conflict. Basically saying, look, you want to save the world, you got to eat some bugs. And then we have this. It says salted ants, ground crickets, why you should try edible insects. That's coming from the Washington Post. All right. So this is what they have. This is what they offer us. We have a problem. We have a crisis. Things are too expensive. We have credit card debt. It's surging. You look at people, they're unable to afford their basic expenses. At the same time, economy is very challenging. You've got people that are going to be competing for jobs right now. We're moving into that environment. Is it a recession? Is it not a recession? All these things. You see what I'm saying? One by one by one by one. That's what we did today. The economy, 4.9%. Oh yeah, it can show that. But what's actually happening? Well, we broke that down further. And so what do they offer you? Well, of course, you've got the RV, you got the living in the car, and you've got the bugs. And they want that to be your future. I don't want that. I want to make sure that you are doing everything that you possibly can. So what we do weekly, we have 2 meetups that we do as part of the group that I have. And this is the Friday one where we talk about the economy. We talk about the stock market. We look at all the insides. And I call it the mentorship group initially, but now we've split into 2 groups. And now what we have there on the Friday session is we talk all about this and we talk about strategies and everything. It's a small Zoom class. And then the Sunday session, we get into the economy, the e-commerce, we get into business. We look at things that you can do today to make money. I give strategies. I give the actual step by step. And I do that in this small Zoom class environment. There's a handful of people in there and all good people. That's the only people that I will allow into the group. And so this is something that I find to be, something that I'm passionate about. I love being part of that group, and we spend upwards of 2 hours on each session, which is crazy, but it's a great time. And if you want to be a part of that, there will be a link in the description. Scroll down and look for mentorship, and you will get that. I want to see you there. I hope that you'll join. If these things, one of these is appropriate to you, if you want to know more details, of course, just click that link, watch the video. You'll see it for yourself. And of course, make sure you take care of yourself, your family, because we are moving into hard times, but I want the best for you. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.